So we're here to talk about Lea David, who has written an article for Contemporary Southeastern Europe on the fragmentation as a silencing strategy, Serbian War Veterans. It's a study about Serbia. So you're arguing in your movements, political movements in Croatia, war veterans have been really pushed as the margins of Serbian society of the 1990s and had democracy in Croatia. Fight back to get very basic rights. In which way do you see these movements maybe you can tell us a little bit about a challenge on which grounds do you see this marginalization political engagement occurring, and also this fragmentation.
Okay, so first of all, good morning to everyone here. So basically, Dragan and I, we have written an article that debates about the current very popular term crisis of democracy and how actually the crisis of democracy, together with some other factors, influence actually the emergence of the new participatory political parties. Those political parties, they have some specificities that do not have conventional political parties such as proactivity, adaptability, and mobilization potential, and they use contemporary ICT technology. They are just emerged from civil society, and all that is quite different from the situation in party politics that we have in Croatia.
On the local level, to be acknowledged as the righteous party in the conflict. So I was actually interested to understand how come that in Serbia we see that we didn't have any serious open debate regarding the wars of the 90s. So that is how I started, and then I started to track down different kinds of mechanisms used by, produced or created by the different governments in Serbia. Actually,
so we identify several factors that were relevant for the success of the local elections in May 2013. First of all, of course, is the umbrella term of crisis of democracy, and actually decreasing mistrust of conventional political parties. However, this is not enough. Our research has demonstrated that increasing public support towards civil society organizations, in addition to disappointment of civil society organizations, with the possibility to cooperate,
it was really very important for me to understand how come we don't hear veterans in this post-conflict context where we see, especially in the literature, and if I may say, coming from Israel,
political parties and political movements that had the success of the May elections.
Their voice of people who participate in the wars, either refugees, war veterans, they were supposed to be crucial in creating or giving kind of a legitimacy to certain narratives. But in Serbia, that is not the case. So that was actually kind of my beginning point. I wanted to see where are those veterans. So really this mechanism of fragmentation is mechanism actually of silence, pushing them aside, further marginalizing veteran populations.
Well, I don't think that that unanimous answer is possible, because to some extent it is true that they are quite local and that they tackle local issues. They are a process of decentralization. I don't know if you know, but Croatia is a very centralized country, and basically what they do is they try to improve the lives of the local community. However, there are traces and there are evidences that there are lots of parties on the European level that actually propose and proponent most of those ideas as well. So basically, I would say that I wouldn't define them throughout their values, but I would define that throughout the way that they communicate with groups of people that they want to approach. In other words, what I would like to emphasize is that they just use the contemporary technologies and contemporary ways of communication that is appropriate for young people and for people who are not very burdened by the classical ideological cleavages that exist in Croatia.
In terms of their multiple groups, they are politically very active. The European experience affiliated. They are part of a particular state narrative, which is, I guess, independence, war,
mostly been a failure in the sense of
a group which had also this grassroots technique.
It's the absence of a clear narrative in Serbia,
what you said, kind of post-ideological
how come that they are so marginal in
because
Serbia
of their
and so
incoherence
central
politically,
in
and
many
also
ways,
some of the
or even
challenges of
centralized,
technology actually in creating some kind of coherent platform
Uh,
that actually mostly
there are many answers to this question, but first of all, it is a completely different story when you have a story of a
I would
victory.
say that the biggest difference between those five parties that we were describing and the Pirate Party is because those five parties aren't anti-systemic. Pirate parties that emerged in Croatia as well as in Europe, they were basically against everything, against the system. They wanted to change the complete system. Those parties that we have described, they do have some elements of this. However, I wouldn't say that the main reason for their existence is the change in the whole system.
Actually, the case in Serbia. We can see even from some interviews that I conducted in Serbia that even at the official level they say, but well, this is not the same. I mean, veterans have to take into consideration that we lost those wars and they have to, as they called it, suck it up. They have to understand there is no spoil to share. So this is an interesting point. And now, to the other question to the other part of your question about this blurred narrative in Serbia, it is interesting because they're highly instrumentalized war veterans in Serbia, but we see that it is not as there is one hegemonic
I would definitely say that ORAH is something that wasn't there when we did our research. So ORAH was founded just several months ago, and it actually does have some kind of values that are quite similar to those parties on the local level. To respond to your question about possibility for the representative democracy, from my point of view and demonstrated in local elections, that some kind of opening of the political space is necessary, because people just don't have a trust anymore in conventional political parties. And the evidence of ORAH as being the sort of third wave is something that we support that claim, because people are, as I said earlier, are not that interested in the difference between conservatives and progressives and the ideology. They just want they want parties that do something, and they want parties that understand people and that take care about their needs. So I would say that this is like the main connection between ORAH and local political parties. However, I see ORAH mainly as a national political party, and this is just a spin-off of some unrealized ideas
on the one side, we see that because there is no one very clear narrative about those wars, we even don't know if we talk about one war or many different wars. I cite now someone, a deputy mayor of Belgrade, saying that we don't know what happened there. So this actually we can see at the bottom-up level where we see tremendous number of war veteran organizations. There is no, like in the after Second World War I, SUBNOR or some kind of a meta-organization that we can, that all veterans relate to. There are many different veteran organizations, and also there has been a law adopted recently, 5 years ago, that actually supports that further fragmentation. Where,
I think the second notion that you mentioned is correct. I would say that they try not to be as ideological as conventional political parties, and this is the main difference, and difference specifically in inequality. Because in the campaign for local elections in 2013, they didn't use classical arguments that could be heard from the Conservative Party, namely in Croatia Democratic Union or leftist Social Democratic Party, which is SDP. They're just trying to perhaps introduce some new topics in political creation, political space.
Those fought in the National Army or paramilitary units or volunteers. All those questions remain really open. So that is one way how they're at the beginning really started being fragmented. And after that, really the most effective way to alienate them was actually to ascribe different privileges to different groups. So that was like was easy actually to divide them again and to create all kinds of animosity between them, which at the end brought to the fore this whole Serbian affair and their lawsuit in the Strasbourg court, human rights.
So the consequence of all of this, to come back to your starting point, talking about memory and how the wars are remembered in the larger public space, the strategy is very much resulting in this kind of what I would call maybe more forgetting, right? Is the silencing or the forgetting of what happened in the wars one of the consequences of what you're outlining for the veterans?
Exactly. That is a way not to deal with the contested past, just to put it aside, to give kind of the time to the lapse of time to do itself, and actually to move the focus from those people who were fighting to their social status, to their trauma, not only to their memories. That is also a way to weaken them and to marginalize them further, and again, not to deal with anything what happened in the wars of the 90s.
Well, thank you so much, Lea, for talking to us and telling us a little bit about your research, and of course a lot more detail we find in the article, including what you mentioned, the Per Diem affair, where all of this went to the level of veterans asking for their human rights to be respected. So thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much for having me. All the best.